Hank, how are you doing on this Monday morning?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
I am doing great. I know Alabama fans are doing exceedingly well on the heels of the commitment of J.C. Latham, a five-star offensive tackle from IMG Academy, to the Alabama Crimson Tide. This one to sort of the average bystander, which I would put myself in that category. I keep up with recruiting, but in terms of how it sort of started to turn in Alabama's favor, I know Tim Watts, our site publisher there at BOL, was out in front of this thing with J.C. Latham. I know you were as well. Kind of give us the turning point, the tipping point in Alabama's favor with this outstanding offensive tackle prospect.
Yeah, I would kind of put it right around, maybe late April, when we really started to get hear the buzz that Bama was probably in it more than people were giving him credit for. He had mentioned Bama throughout the spring, but it was more of thought to be, at least from people that were writing about him, it was Ohio State was the perceived leader. If you looked at the crystal ball, it was 100% to Ohio State. LSU was, a lot thought that LSU was the chief competition to Ohio State, but in that late April range, it was kind of clear that the Bama was plugging away at that recruitment. They had made him a priority, obviously. He had an offer from spring of 2019, so the offer's been there for a while. But, with this push this spring throughout this whole, dead period where the staff has had more time to kind of circle back, do their evaluations, really, hone in on the film, and do the recruiting that way. I think that really kind of was the turning point. I think, I want to credit, obviously, Charles Huff and Kyle Flood for the work they put in, but, the Evan Neal, I think, comparison and kind of how they pitched, what he could do, what his path could be from five-star prospect at IMG Academy to potentially starting on the offensive line at Alabama as a true freshman. I think that, I think that opened his eyes a lot. And, I think with Bama, I think he saw more of a need at this point, to play potentially early than he did at Ohio State, with the guys they have in their class and the young guys they have on their team. So I think all that kind of in that late April, early May range really kind of started to drive things more in favor of Alabama. And then, as the month went on, when he decided to go ahead and make a commitment, Bama really just pulled ahead and won out for him.
Now, Hank, correct me if I'm wrong here, but with the pandemic factored into all this and, just kind of where he's at in terms of the process, has J.C. Latham even had the opportunity to visit Alabama and Tuscaloosa to this point?
So that was a question I had. I talked to his dad, I guess a week and a half ago. He said they have not. He said, they only have, J.C. actually has a little brother that's a 2022 recruit. And so his dad is working on, taking them both on visits and kind of divvying up the visit budget as best he can for both of them. Obviously, he's coming from Wisconsin. JC's IMG Academy now. So they wanted to get to Bama this spring or possibly this summer. They didn't have the chance to. So, whenever he does take a visit later this year, it'll be his first in person, to my knowledge, in Tuscaloosa.
That's kind of the sign of the times for right now, I guess. We've seen Tennessee kind of really rack up commitments. In fact, that's going to lead me to where I want to go with you next. I see where the Vols picked up another commitment this morning, this time from a four-star tight end that Alabama had some involvement with, I believe, earlier on in the process in Hudson Wolf. What about the tight end position as we get into that a little bit? Based on your reporting, it looks like Alabama's leaving no rock unturned as far as that position goes, even as far as to offer a recent send a recent offer out to a 2021 prospect, I guess.
Yeah, they're looking at everybody. Whereas we saw kind of a lot of the focus in 2020 on guys like Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington, and that kind of, I don't want to say backfired, but they kind of had to circle back on some other guys late, and got a good grad transfer in Carl Tucker, but obviously they didn't get the two prep guys they wanted. So they're working hard at the position. We saw Hudson Wolf commit to Tennessee this morning. He was a guy, I think this time last year, even up to all the this past February, I would have been surprised if he didn't pick Bama. But as time went on, Ohio State actually kind of picked up some momentum. Tennessee really turned up the heat in the last month and a half on him, and won out for him and kept him home today. He did a recent interview saying he wasn't talking to Bama as much. So, I'm not sure if that's Bama, kind of backing off a little bit, or, Tennessee just talking more and him recognizing that. So, we'll see. But a nice pickup for Tennessee and Hudson Wolf. But kind of a really interesting development this past week on the tight end front is Bama actually, we're in a dead period. But that doesn't keep kids from, they can go visit colleges on their own. They just can't have the dead period is no in-person contact with the coaching staff or anybody on the Alabama football staff. And so a tight end target named Robbie Oott, who we've talked about a couple times, out of South Carolina, took a trip down to Tuscaloosa with his dad and toured campus on his own. And it was interesting because while he was down in Tuscaloosa, he met up with Miller Forstall, who's been talking to this spring. They were asking him for restaurant recommendations, and Miller did them one better and met up with him and gave him a tour of campus. So it was kind of one of these unique situations we're seeing we've seen it other places. I think some kids have done it at Notre Dame and I think maybe Michigan this spring. So, you can take a visit, just not talk to the coaches and, get a feel for campus. And that's what Robbie Oott did. And he looks to be like maybe one of the top, if not the top tight end targets at this point in time.
So let's circle back, in your words, like Alabama did at the tight end position in the 2020 class. And as far as offensive tackle goes, I think maybe the most promising aspect of all this, even with J.C. Latham in the boat, Crimson Tide doesn't appear to be done there. In fact, could add potentially another 5-star to this mix in the not-too-distant future, maybe, Hank?
Yeah, and that was, everyone's kind of first question was, if J.C. Latham does commit, how does that affect a guy like Tommy Brockermeyer, the 5-star offensive tackle Bama's been in on, probably longer than J.C. Latham at this point in time. And, I did some checking on that, and it sounds like Bama's still in very strong position for Tommy Brockermeyer and his twin brother, James Brockermeyer. Obviously, Tommy's the 5-star offensive tackle. James is the 4-star center, rated the number one center in the country. And, that's a recruitment we've touched on it several times. This time last year, I think most would be shocked if those guys didn't end up anywhere but Texas. Their dad played at Texas, their brother plays at Texas, they're from Texas. They had all the ties to the Longhorns. But it's really been Bama that surged in their recruitment since, I would even put it back to December, but really in early February when Bama offered James, the twin brother. Tommy had the offer from early in 2019. And another one of these recruitments where, Kyle Flood's done a really good job, Carl Scott's done a really good job. The whole staff has just really impressed these guys throughout the spring in these Zoom meetings and these presentations they've given them. They were set, today's June 15th, they were set to take an official visit this upcoming weekend had that calendar not been disrupted. But, they've both been to Tuscaloosa twice. Got to imagine they'll be back again if business can resume in 2020. And Bama just seems to be in good shape for both of them.
Linebacker obviously has been a point of emphasis both in the 2020 cycle and then now in the most current run here in 2021. And I see where Tim White, site publisher for BOL, entered an interesting crystal ball from over the weekend when you talk about linebacker. I think it's a guy that you've felt for a while now Alabama is in very strong position with, and that's Kendrick Blackshire. Tell us a little bit more about this Texan who I believe had an injury maybe during his junior season that he's still trying to maybe get over, trying to overcome, but it doesn't seem to be impeding his recruitment all that much.
No, not at all. Really, his recruitment is stayed with all these SEC and Big 12 schools after him. This time last year, it was this month. It might have been today. This time last year, we thought maybe he was going to be committing on that Champions Cookout visit. He ended up holding off. Took his recruitment into his junior year. He had an unfortunate ACL injury that I believe he's pretty much back to full speed now, if not very close. He's right now. I just checked in actually this morning on him. He's about 6'2", 245. If you've seen pictures of him, I mean, he's just he is rocked up. He's a big kid. So kind of that pretty typical inside linebacker, but he's real athletic. Everyone kind of talks about how big he is, but he moves really well, and obviously we'll see how he comes off this ACL injury. But from the rehab process, from people I've talked to around him, it sounds like it's gone, perfectly for Kendrick Blackshire. And I still think, throughout this whole time, Bama's held an edge for him. LSU has kind of been the one school that's maybe given them pause as far as, Bama being that outright leader. But I still think they've maintained their edge for him in this recruitment. Jeff Banks has done a really good job. They've got some strong ties there with him and Carl Scott in that DFW area, Duncanville, Texas in particular. So I think this is one Bama could win out and potentially win out this summer if he decides to go ahead and commit.
Yeah, 10 crystal ball predictions are in for Kendrick Blackshire, the 6'2", 250-pound linebacker from Duncanville, Texas. Of those 10, it looks like 9 or 8, I guess, are in favor of the Alabama Crimson Tide. You got 1 for Oklahoma, 1 that's undecided. Hank South, though, when it comes to that new confidence level feature you've got with the crystal balls, Hank South with a confidence level of 9 where Kendrick Blackshire is concerned and his potential to commit to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Talking with Hank South, recruiting analyst for BamaOnline.com on a Monday edition of Southern Fried Sports presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier. Hank, it's interesting because how numbers one year at a particular position can impact numbers the following year. And I want to ask you specifically about that in regards to the running back position, because I think it raised a few eyebrows in the 2020 cycle to see Alabama take 3 backs. What is perhaps the carryover from that for the 2021 cycle? I'm guessing with the 3 backs Alabama was able to secure in the 2020 cycle, it's going to take a pretty special guy to make the cut for this 2021 spot at that position.
Yeah, I think so. I did a mock class last week on Bama Online where, I didn't even include a running back at this point just because, if they didn't take one, you're still looking at 5 scholarship backs in the roster even without Najee Harris and Brian Robinson after 2020. So, it would not be a shock, I don't think, if they didn't take one. And, yeah, I do think it'll take from a special. And that's not to say they're not recruiting the position. They've been in contact with guys like Donovan Edwards, one of the top backs in the country, out of Michigan. Saban went to go see him back in January, pretty early on. Kamar Wheaton's another one that's been on campus, was on campus this time last year for that cookout, and I think he worked out as well at the camp the next day. And then there's a strong in-state pool of guys too. We recently just saw a kid, Deshaun Morrell from in the state. He committed to UCLA last week. So there's guys that are kind of a little bit under the radar, but certainly some high upside backs. Deshaun Morrell. There's a guy named Trent Davis out of Etowah. And, of course, Joseph McKay, who I actually caught up with Patrick Nix last week about from Phoenix City Central. He said he's real underrated. He's 6', 216, and he said he's a guy that he sees NFL future for. So maybe there's some. I think without camps, it's kind of hurting some of these guys to get more looks from the staff. But there's certainly guys that I think with maybe strong senior seasons, depending on where Bama is out at the running back position at that point. They can get some further evaluations and maybe make a move on some of these in-state kids or, continue pressing for the other one.
Yeah, Morrell from right there at Bibb County High School in Centerville, about 30 miles, as we know, south of southeast or south there of Tuscaloosa. Just head down Highway 82. I got to think Morrell's going to be the first Bibb County player to ever suit up for the Bruins of UCLA. That's good for him. That's a great opportunity, and by all accounts, a really explosive player, a guy that perhaps if offense isn't his forte at the next level, he can also play some defense. So some versatility there with the Morrell kid out of Bibb County. Hank, as we let you go here, it's kind of a law, I think, in recruiting circles that I have to ask you about the quarterback position, regardless of the situation, no matter how many Alabama has on its roster, how good things look at the position with Mac Jones, with Bryce Young, Paul Tyson still in play there. Talia Tagovailoa obviously has moved on to the University of Maryland, but it has been an interesting situation since really the turn of the new year to see how the situation for 2021 has played out. As it sits today, if Alabama, and I'm sure Alabama will, signs a quarterback in this class, who would you go with as that player that'll be a part of the 2021 group?
I'm still, I put him in my class last week, and it's not high confidence, and obviously I didn't put a crystal ball in on it, but I still like Luke Altmaier at this point out of Starkville, Mississippi. He's committed to Florida State. We haven't seen commitments elsewhere. really hinder Bama too much when it comes to getting guys that they're really pursuing. He's been to Bama twice. He's already said he wants to take another official visit. He wants to take an official visit to Tuscaloosa despite his commitment to FSU. He's built a really strong relationship with Sark. So there's things going in the right direction. I think for Alabama's chances there. I don't want people to forget about Jalen Milroe. I still think the Texas commit is still very much in play. It's just a matter of will he take visits? Will he open up that part of his recruitment to where he's going to actually go physically to visit other schools? Because we all know Bama's history with Jalen Milroe and the relationships he has on the staff from last summer as well. So I'm going with Altmaier. That's not with any sort of confidence. I just think that one of the quarterbacks that Bama's really pursuing right now, he makes makes the most sense as far as an argument to be in the class.
Hank, as always, great stuff right there at BamaOnline.com. If you haven't already, you need to check us out. Come hang out with us on the Roundtable, the premium message board there at BOL as well. Hank, thanks a lot, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks, Travis.